Gavin Robinson.
The entire community in Northern Ireland has shown great restraint. They have understood the implications of not obeying regulations around COVID-19. They have restricted their own lives to such a degree that, albeit it has been difficult, they recognise the important public health requirements for doing so. And that was all put in great jeopardy last week by the attendance of the Deputy First Minister and the Finance Minister at the Bobby Storey funeral. And you will have seen over the weekend the suggestion by some saying, well, that's it, we'll all do what we want. And so I do have a concern around that. And my message today is do not fall into that trap. Do not shift the focus of where it should lie, and that is very squarely against those that breach the coronavirus regulations, and recognise that this is serious and that there are still consequences for not adhering to the public health advice.
You're a lawyer, Gavin, so help us out with this. What do you think the legal status of bonfires would be during this pandemic period, with the potential of a significant number of people gathering around them on the 11th night?
Well, as you know, bonfires are unregulated, and we have that discussion each year. But this year, particularly, the requirements and the responsibility for those organising outdoor public events is much more acute. And we know that the only 30 people can gather at an outside space, and the unregulated and at times uncontrolled aspect to bonfires and community that wish to attend them and so on makes it all the more difficult. So whilst I recognise the huge frustration from last week, and also recognise that there are those that say we will try to manage any bonfire celebration that we wish to have, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult. And the consequences of getting it wrong in public health terms, never mind political terms, are not helpful and hugely regrettable.
The whole point, of course, as you know, of the coronavirus legislation and the sweeping restrictions that were brought in with that legislation is to drastically limit all kinds of activities in order to try to slow the spread of COVID-19. I take your point that there is an issue of regulation around bonfires more generally, but wouldn't the activity of constructing a bonfire be covered by these sweeping restrictions in the coronavirus regulations?
Well, there's nothing specific in the regulations that impinges upon bonfires. The specific restriction is around the numbers gathered in an outdoor event. And that is where I see most difficulty, that even well-intentioned, community-focused, historically arranged bonfires, which have a place in our society and have an important place within Unionist culture and heritage, in organising an event like that, it's going to be incredibly hard to manage the attendance of individuals, to limit the numbers of individuals. And from that perspective, I think it does open the avenue for organising an event which ultimately is unmanageable and therefore detrimental to the public health messaging. But let's be clear, I understand entirely why people are frustrated, why over the weekend there were some voices saying, throw caution to the wind. If it's all right for the Deputy First Minister, it's all right for us. I understand it. I get it. But I am saying very clearly that two wrongs do not make a right, and that the danger to the public is still paramount concern for us all. It should be. Recognise the consequences of what could be an uncontrollable event and make sure that you limit as far as possible any concern for public health consequences.
So do I understand you as saying, Gavin, that building a bonfire, as long as you limit participation to under 30, would be consistent with the coronavirus regulations?
Well, I've said very clearly that there's nothing specific in the coronavirus regulations that touches upon bonfires. They weren't written for that purpose, and there is no specific mention for bonfires in those regulations. But what I am saying is there's a very clear restriction around the numbers of people at organised outdoor events, and that number is 30. And so to organise an event where it will be difficult to control, potentially unmanageable to control the numbers participating, and therefore fall foul of the regulations, but also bring forth the prospect of causing public health damage, I don't think is the responsible thing to do. And I do think that in the course of the last number of days, that message is resonating. That's the regulations message and the public health message, but also the political message. message. The political message in recognising that every party in the Northern Ireland Assembly is at one in condemning Sinn Féin in their scant disregard for public health messaging and for the restrictions that we have. And so in recognising a historical victory in 1690, I see no political benefit in inflicting a self-defeat on the Unionist community by throwing all the concerns and the protections to the wind.